There you go. If anybody ever looked at home behind a kit, Neil Peart, one of the great drummers, as I said, in any genre, known for his music, 24 years with the rock band Rush, taking a fervent foray into big band music and jazz. Of course, that part of the tribute to Buddy Rich, and the album is the second volume, hot on the heels of Volume 1, Burning for Buddy. And you're scorching it up there. In fact, we're keeping time as that thing was playing. It's almost like it's always coursing through you. Is that the case?
Yeah, it's very strange that it's a constant response to rhythm in music anywhere. I noticed I was at the opera the other night, and I'm sitting there kind of tapping along with, you know, an opera symphony orchestra.
Wow. It's like you can't put it aside for even a moment. It's
No, since I was a kid, I got started that way with banging around the house on pots and pans, and I remember a pair of chopsticks on my little sister's playpen kind of gave my parents the idea that I was going to bang on things with sticks, so they got me drum lessons for my 13th birthday and got me started that way.
And did they ever regret it at any of
your...
Oh,
who wouldn't? What parent wouldn't regret having a child, a trumpet player or a drummer, I think, has got to be the most antisocial kind of thing. But they always stood up for me against the neighbors, and they let me practice until they just couldn't bear it anymore. And they were really great about it.
And, of course, it's paid off in spades. I guess you're doing the thing that you're drawn to just as a natural avocation, but you've also strayed a little bit from rock and roll that most people recognize you for. As I said, 24 years. Boy, talk about longevity and a band that's lasted, enduring. You've gone into jazz. When I say gone into, it was always there, lingering sort of in the backdrop, wasn't it?
Well, seed was planted in childhood, certainly, because it was my dad's favorite music, and I think it kind of crept into me. But even so, just from a pure drummer's point of view, it's the only other style of music besides what I do in Rush that I like equally, because it allows equal amounts of structure and improvisation. And I like both. You know, I don't like to have just improvisational music because it's really in front of an audience, I think, a bit risky, as many improvisational musicians have told me. On the other hand, of course, if it's too structured, then you just become playing a rote part, and that's not very good either. So what we've done in the band, of course, we've always combined both and allowed improvisation to happen if it can. You know, if the night is magic, we always plant stepping stones through our music to let us step out, or through my drum solo. It's a structure, but that structure allows me to rise to whatever height I'm capable of on that day. And big band appeals to me in that way because there's solos, there are ensemble sections where the band works together, and it's exciting. There's lots of activity, but there's subtlety, and there's just all those elements that I like about Rush's music are also present in big band music. So my first experience of it was playing it live, and it was a bit frustrating because there's a 15-piece band, and I'm used to playing by ear of hearing what's going on around me, and I couldn't. So I felt a bit at sea, and after the fact I felt a little bit down about it, but then thought, well, do it again, do it better. So I was looking for an opportunity to get into the studio and try it, and we had a break from Rush for a while. I thought, okay, now's the time. And I thought, well, somebody ought to produce a Buddy Rich tribute, and I could play on it. That would have satisfied me completely, but it had to be me, of course, to launch it all into activity, just so I could have the opportunity to do it.
And that was early in the 90s, was it?
94.
94,
yeah.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about how the project then started to evolve, and involved a lot of great drummers. I mean, some you didn't get a hold of for a variety of reasons, but tell us about that.
Yeah, Buddy's daughter Kathy had always been involved. She'd sung with the band since she was a little girl, and when Buddy passed away, one of his last requests was to try to keep the band working. And so she held a scholarship in Buddy's name and would hold a concert every year or so with guest drummers playing with the Buddy Rich Big Band. And so I got together with Kathy, and together we contacted. She had great connections, of course, among all these drummers, and we started making a list of who we thought ought to be included from the jazz field. Some of Buddy's contemporaries like Ed Shaughnessy, Joe Morello, Max Roach.
Well, we remember Ed Shaughnessy from the Tonight Show.
The Tonight Show, exactly. He was the Tonight Show all those years, and Buddy, of course, was a guest, I think, 70 times on there.
Because Johnny loved drums.
Johnny was a frustrated drummer, and also the repartee between the two of them,
for sure.
and Buddy's outspokenness, you know, just worked so well on TV.
He seemed a little off kilter, and I could never read him right if he was, you know, just being, say, difficult to get along with, or it was his quirky sense of humor.
It's the classic personality where he was so kind and soft that he had to cover it up with a hard facade. So he did. He would growl at people, and he was always really opinionated and had a you know, quite a bad temper. But behind it all, I just hear now all of the musicians that worked with him and were on the receiving end of temper tantrums and rages, they just can't talk enough about how much they miss him and how much they love him, and because his generosity was always there, and his his lead saxophone player, Steve Marcus, who was with him for, I don't know, maybe 20 years, and was always his liaison, would tell me stories that Buddy would come off stage, if you ever play like that again, you're fired and you're out of here. And he would knock a table into his leg, and he would stop in the middle of his tirade, are you all right? I mean, just his humanity never faltered. You know, if he thought he'd really hurt someone, his rage was gone. You know.
Did you ever meet him?
No, never did. Ironically, that I've come to know his music so well, that his family, all of his musicians, his best friends, all his life. I've met them all now, and I feel as if I've known him, but I actually never did.
Well, it's quite a tribute. I mean, to be involved in such a project, it goes without saying when you're bringing this pantheon of great drummers together to pay homage to the man, by extension keeping, you know, the legacy alive. Would you say that, I mean, it's a fair assessment that he was the greatest drummer?
Beyond doubt, yeah. And all of the other people who might have won that crown, Gene Krupa always said, look, there's Buddy, and then there's everybody else. And Joe Morello, one of the all-time greats with Dave Brubeck and Take Five and all that, a legendary technician. My first drum lesson, there was a picture of Joe Morello on the wall, and he just says, Buddy, man, there's no comparison. And it's true. There's a little clip I think we're going to look at of him, and the stuff he's doing on there, I can tell you from a drummer's point of view, it's impossible. The way he can make his limbs work opposite each other so smoothly. But he played since he was 3 years old. He had an amazing facility of dexterity and talent and musicality. He played in small groups with Nat Cole and Lester Young. He played behind singers from Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr. He drove his own big band. I mean, he was a musician so consummately that not only did drummers love him, singers loved him, horn players loved him. I mean, he could do anything, and would. He would completely subvert his ego to play in a small group, you know, just a trio, and he'd be with brushes, played beautiful brushes, just as delicate as could be, and he was just a total musician. He's, of course, remembered mostly outside of drummers for the fiery solos and so on, but he could actually do anything.
Let's hang on to that. You've just opened a whole Pandora's box or wealth of things that I'm curious about, and I'm sure the listeners, our viewers, are as well, and we'll invite their calls for Neil Peart, drummer for the rock band Rush, and we're entering sort of a world that I'm a complete Philistine where that is concerned, but I want to know more about Buddy Rich's technique, and that we'll show that clip too when we come back. Stay with us. We're up and running live on Life. The toll-free is available with the drummer for Rush, Neil Peart. We're back in a moment.